if they found his shroud, they have his body and the God DNA. No, they wouldn't have his body. They wouldn't. God's body, or Jesus' body, went back to heaven. Yeah, his body. He didn't resurrect and come in spirit form. He was in physical form when he resurrected. Remember, because it was it Thomas or Mark? I always get it confused. Said, nope, I don't want to see spirit. I better be the physical body. And it was. It was. He touched him. It was, and I think he hanged around for a little while. Jesus did after he resurrected. Yeah. But then he left. So there would never be any finding of his body. So, because, yeah, he died. They wrapped him in it. Then he resurrected, but he didn't resurrect as a spirit. He resurrected into his body. Very key to realize that, really. He was in his body. This shroud, this isn't something this has been around some 30 years, probably longer. Maybe since the 80s. And there's been tons of people that have researched, so many researchers from all over the world, scientists, people in technology. It's been x-rayed, it's been studied. I mean, because people can't debunk it, and yet they've had to wait until technology advances. So this past year, there's been a lot being done with it, with the advancement of technology. And so they have now determined that it is 2,000 years old. It is the wrap that was around Jesus, and it is consistent with the torture he suffered. So like many of the people that were, because there were two people on either side of him that were crucified that were criminals too, they weren't beaten. Jesus was beaten because he said he was the king. Yeah, so he that's the reason they brutalized him and then crucified him. So he suffered more injuries than anybody. And yet the shroud is consistent with where these injuries are with the Bible. Here, let me read what it says. It says, so this was 2024. The Shroud of Turin, a linen cloth revered by many as the burial shroud of Jesus, has mystified scholars and believers alike for centuries. The cloth itself reveals faint brownish images of a gaunt man standing between 5'7" and 6 feet tall, with markings that correspond to the crucifixion wounds described in the Bible, including thorn marks on the head, lacerations on the back, and bruises on the shoulders. These details align with the biblical account of Jesus' suffering, suggesting that the man depicted on the shroud endured similar torture. And that's huge because, yes, they did crucifixions back then, but they didn't beat people like they did Jesus. That whole crown of thorns was because he said he was king of the Jews. 1988, an international team of researchers performed carbon dating on small fragments of the shroud, concluding that the fabric originated between 1260 and 1390 AD. But then that's now changed because, the technology is, rapidly advancing. And they've now it's for sure that it's 2,000 years old. And this, we know from the Bible too, that I thought was it Joseph and Mary that wrapped him in this? They have done DNA on it. What's interesting, and that's why I'm showing this, is blood typing in the shroud. Positive for AB is not the same as AB positive. Yeah. But we don't have, the computers don't it has to be either AB positive or AB negative. It's not with Jesus's though. Because, and I don't think it would be if you know anything about the way that Jesus was conceived. I doubt it would be. So, but you ask like ChatGPT and it's like, no, it can't be. It's either AB positive or AB, and it's like, well, no, it's not. Only because it says here that, To the best of my knowledge, expression of the Rh factor on the blood stains on the shroud has never been evaluated. In a personal communications with Bayamon Balone last year, one of the scientists, he replied that the Rh factor was too degraded for study at the protein level. The positive and negative designations that are at times assigned to the shroud bloodstains are most likely somatic in nature due to non-standard use of the words positive or negative, and they're not data-driven. It is correct to say that the blood on the shroud is positive for AB. That's what they're saying. It's positive for AB. That doesn't mean it's AB positive, because they can't determine that. So it is correct to say that the blood on the shroud is positive for AB, which is most precisely stated as types as AB. It is not accurate to say that the blood on the shroud is AB positive. This implies additional information about the expression of the Rh molecule, which is unknown because it was too degraded. And I would imagine I mean, think about it. I mean, I know this is why many people, they just can't wrap their head around, oh, some spirit got married, you know. Look at the world we live in. I don't know why that should be a shocker. Anyway, so people with AB blood they inherit an A gene from one parent and a B gene from another based on the underlying number of people in the A and B blood types. The odds of that particular combination happening are simply lower than any other possibility. Yeah, like there would be nobody that's just AB. But Jesus probably would be, if you understand what I'm saying. Because it wasn't, you know, yes, he'd have Mary's blood. But yeah, that's... in the cases of blood types, being the rare one offers one huge advantage. People who are AB positive can receive a blood type, are also known as universal recipients. Okay, who cares about that? So basically that's... they've done a lot of studies with the blood that they have gotten off of it. It's, you know, and they've determined it's... So, I mean, that alone is... we know it's AB. Bloodstains found on the Shroud of Turin consistent with the torture Christ suffered. Yeah, that's huge to me. I mean, in my personal opinion, because just because people were, you know, the penalties for being guilty of something back in those days was being crucified. Not many of them did they beat beforehand. They did that to Jesus because he said he was the king. They didn't put a crown of thorns on anybody else, and they didn't spear anybody else. They speared him. They tortured him. They beat him. They speared him. So all that shroud, all is consistent. So for people that would say, oh, could have been on any crucified person. No, not. Other crucified people weren't beaten like Jesus was. If people remember, everybody, the two other men that died, that were crucified on Calvary, they only had to carry part of their wood. Jesus was made to carry the whole cross. The other two just had to carry one, you know, one slab of the cross. So they especially were sticking it to Jesus. So that's what makes it unique, that this shroud is definitely is from Jesus then. But yeah, his body would never be recovered here because his body went back to the Father. Not just spirit. He resurrected in his body, everything. Hung out for a little bit, had dinner with his disciples. He did. This is why they went on to write about this and were willing to be killed over it. Because it's like, well, after that, yeah, nobody's going to try to tell me otherwise. I know where I'm going. So, like, people just don't lie about that. But then he did go back to the Father. So nobody expected to ever find his bones. And they've never been found. But what they wrapped him in, well, that's been around for a while, and now technology has proven, well, that it belonged to Jesus.